Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Congressional Debate How-To series. This is Morteza Cosmi back at it again with another video, this time talking about refutation. As I left off last lecture, I noted that refutation was one of my favorite portions of congressional debate because I think this is where we really stamp in the debate aspect of this activity. So I hope you'll find refutation as enjoyable as I did when I was competing, and let's learn about this together because it's a really important concept in this activity. First, some definitions. Refutation. Refutation is responding to opposing arguments and showing that they're wrong. That's the simplest way to explain it. You have an opponent, they have their arguments. Refutation is showing why they're wrong and you're right. And this can be combined with the analysis right after your warrant, right? And after the sponsor, every speech must have some refutation. This is a really important aspect. Almost every judge that you will ever encounter in your life is going to look for some level of refutation because that's what distinguishes congressional debate from oratory or informative speaking, that we do have a debate element as part of our activity. So make sure that you're using refutation, especially after the affirmative speech. And even if you're the affirmative speech, first affirmative, the author speech, I would like you to preempt one or two arguments. Anything that can show you the rest of the chamber that, no, you are involved in the round, that you are hearing what other people have to say, and you understand why they're wrong and why you are right. Okay, so let's talk about this idea of offense and defense, because that's really critical to when we're talking about refutation. And in pink, I've written a bit of a castle analogy, and in brown, ways to refute. So offense is a reason to vote for you. This is another definition, right? Offense is the reason that you're right. And the castle analogy is like sending knights to attack. It's like you're sending other people to attack on behalf of your kingdom, that you're showing that there's a reason to vote for you, that you are right, right? The way that we can accomplish this is through these debate terminologies. Turns, what they said is actually a reason to vote for you, right? So someone really confidently goes up in their speech, gives an argument. You can turn their argument by showing what they're saying is actually not a reason to vote for them, but for you. And that's why it's called a turn. What about a link turn? A link turn is this idea that they say something will increase, but in reality, it'll decrease. So the rest of their analysis then goes on your side. It's just it's a type of turn, right? But specifically to the link. When something will either increase, it'll actually decrease, or if they say something will decrease, it'll actually increase, something like that. An impact turn is another type of turn. And this is, again, talking about if your opponent says that this impact is good, you can impact turn them and show that that impact is actually bad. Or alternatively, your opponent can say that an impact is really bad, but you can show that it's really good. And again, this requires analytics, this requires evidence, this requires analysis, all of these different things to prove that point, to prove the evidence, to validate your turn. But these are the kind of ways that you show that there's a reason to vote for your side, right? And again, it's like sending knights to attack. Well, what about defense? Defense is a reason not to vote for your opponents, right? So in the way that offense is a reason to vote for you because the legislation is good or bad, the defensive side is the reason to not vote for your opponents. And the castle analogy is like you're building a wall around your castle, right? That you're giving protection to your arguments per se, right? So there's several ways of refuting defensively. One is to indict. Evidence is wrong or misconstrued, very self-explanatory. The more you research, the more you can call out people on this. Non-unique, it's already happening right now. This is a very common phrase to use in congressional debate, that this argument is non-unique, Judge, because this event is already happening. There's nothing new. They're not explaining anything that the legislation is actually going to do. Short circuit, they're missing something about the implementation. Basically, this idea that they think that the implementation is going to be very smooth, but in reality, there are a lot of barriers that prevent implementation from occurring. So then that eliminates the rest of their arguments. Mitigation, it doesn't matter, small impact. This is where you use impact calculus, right? This is where you show that, yeah, their impact occurs, it's great, but it doesn't really matter in the long scheme of things. Maybe it's a short-term impact and you're focused more on the long term. Whatever the case may be, you can use this strategy. Finally, solvency. There's no evidence or link to the legislation. This is so common in congressional debate. People often try to debate the issues, which is valid, but really congressional debate is about debating the legislation. So as bad as the situation is, if the solution actually makes it worse, then you should be implementing that piece of legislation despite how bad the situation is in the status quo. So making sure that solvency is part of your opponent's speech is a really important part. And if they don't have it, then call them out on it. And just wanted to go back on indictment. These are some of the ways that you can indict the evidence: time frame, funding, methodology, recency. Again, as you get more experience, you can begin to call out evidence that you feel is not up to par. I wouldn't recommend doing this that often, but if it's like really egregious mistake, then do it. All right, so what about what to refute? We know how to refute now. We know the process of it. Where do we refute? What do we refute? First, starting at the claim. This is too easy. Don't do this. This is very pointless. You would just say that their claim is wrong and you're right. This is very elementary level refutation. I would say never do this again, okay? Warrant, the logic behind their argument. The rationale is wrong or misguided. This is where you can turn, right? Because you're basically saying that the logic of their speech is wrong. So you can turn it as offensive argument for your side. So this is a great place, the warrant. What about the data? Looking at opportunities to indict, right? We talked a little bit about this process in the previous part of the notes, but it just requires some background information. And there are several ways you can indict. I wouldn't recommend you to do it that often, but you can do it. It's an opportunity for you if you would like to do that. Impact. Impact is a great place to refute. You prove that the impact either won't happen, solvency, right? Doesn't matter, mitigation. Impact calculus works better though. So again, using all of these different strategies, typically we're going to be refuting here in the warrant, the impact, sometimes the data, just never in the claim, okay? Finally, how to do this in Congress, right? Because Congress refutation is a bit different than public forum or Lincoln Douglas refutation, because you don't just have one opponent, you may have 19 opponents, right? So the way you do this is you state the opposing argument in your speech, who said it, which representative, what they said, and roughly why they said it, right? Basically their claim and their warrant or something like that, right? And if possible, you should try to group speakers, right? If all of the affirmative is saying the same kind of thing, I would list every single affirmative speaker just to show that you've been involved in the round and that you know how to group arguments together, right? Okay, so you first start off by stating this opposing argument. Then you provide a counterclaim, right? You say, but that is not the case. The reality is whatever you want to say. Providing this counterclaim is going to directly go against this opposing argument. After you provide the counterclaim, it's not enough to provide the claim. We need to provide some reasoning as well, data, logic, impact calculus, however you want to do it, something that supports what you're saying in your claim, okay? And finally, we summarize. Each refutation also needs an impact. We always need to come back to the impact on human beings, because nothing else matters other than the impact on human beings. This is extremely important. And frankly, a lot of refutation misses the mark because it doesn't impact back to human beings or to the things that really matter in the frame of the debate. And one thing is just make sure to flow arguments so that you know who to refute, who said what. You don't have to go too crazy detailed on it, but as you become more experienced, you'll find a system that's more comfortable for you to note down what arguments your opponents have made throughout the round. All right. Well, I hope that you guys enjoyed this lecture. This was a pretty dense lecture compared to other lectures, but that's because refutation is a really critical and important part of not just congressional debate, but all forms of debate in speech and debate. So I hope you enjoyed this lecture on refutation. Next time, we'll be covering speaking performance, so like rhetoric, things like that. But for now, this is Mortha Cosme signing off. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I hope to see you guys next time. Thank you.